an original MCM production.
I'd like to call upon Member Richie Burke, President of Go Get It, who will introduce our speaker.
All right. Good afternoon, fellow Rotarians. Today, I have the good pleasure of introducing my friend, Blair Williams. For those of you who know Blair, he's a brilliant developer, a community leader, and an all-around good guy. For those of you who know Blair, you also know that he absolutely loves to talk a lot. So, we like to be respectful of his time, so I won't take too long, but of those of you here who are interested, we currently have the over-under of Blair making it through 2.5 slides in his presentation. And I think Mary's going to keep the pool open for a couple more minutes, so thank you, Mary. Rita wrote me a nice introduction, but before diving into that, I want to list off a couple of Blair's life accomplishments that are actually directly applicable to our club here today. Blair defeated 2015 Rotary Scramble Golf champion Richie Burke in a recreational round earlier this year. Pretty big deal. Blair also shares office space and works with former Rotarian Ian Abston. I wanted to make note of that because this really shows that Blair possesses the traits of kindness, patience, truth, fairness, goodwill, friendship, and benefit, which happen to be the exact same traits that we value here at the Rotary Club. On top of all this, Blair Williams is the president of WiRED Properties, a real estate development and consulting firm specializing in mixed-use development and community creation. Much of Blair's work is rooted in his desire to use physical space to weave people and places together. And Blair was recently hired by the Milwaukee Bucks as a consultant and is currently the acting managing director of real estate. And on behalf of the Bucks, Blair is quarterbacking the planning and development of the 4.5 city blocks surrounding the arena. Today, he will be sharing WiRED's approach to community creation and the Bucks' vision for the arena district. Let's welcome Blair Williams.
Thank you, Richie. That actually went so much better than I thought it might. And I would like to also accept all thanks for having Ian with me at all times. The Milwaukee Bucks did hire me, and that's why you wanted me up here. And I'm very appreciative of the Rotarians and all their guests to give me the opportunity to speak. But I think it's really important for me to help you understand why the Bucks would have hired me in the first place. The Bucks present an interesting thing here in Milwaukee. 3 billionaires from New York bought a NBA franchise, came to Milwaukee, and I think there was some underlying fear that that hedge fund mentality was going to drive the way they approach developing in our city, that they would impose their financial will rather than reaching into the community to understand how they can amplify our community spirit. So the fact that they hired a local guy is a testament to their approach to this business. And I think the way I approach our business is one of the reasons they did that. So first, a little bit about what we do. Richie suggested it, but we are a full-service real estate development and consulting firm. At-risk development is something that, excuse me, I've been doing on my own since I founded WiRED Properties in 2005. I did it on behalf of another terrific developer here in town prior to that. And we have taken a very singular approach in that. We have tried to cultivate community in every single one of our developments. We also do fee development, which means we bring that same ethos to bear on our clients' expectations for their real estate development solutions. And we also do strategy consulting. And what I'm doing for the Bucks is a blend of each of these. This week, in fact, we're launching a new consulting platform with Ian Abston, who is an acknowledged millennial expert. We're launching what we call the WiRED MAP. That's an acronym for Millennial Action Plan. And in that plan, we provide wayfinding to corporations and to municipalities looking to use both the built environment and social programming to recruit and retain millennials. And that applies really to every municipality today. It's a big issue in Milwaukee on the retention side, and it's a big issue in the suburban communities across the country for the recruitment side. And we work every day on that, but that's really tied to our approach to real estate. We believe that communities don't just happen, they're made. And to us, the thing that kind of defines our approach is that real estate isn't about buildings or structures that take up space. It's about spaces that structure lives. And one of our firm beliefs is that you can't separate the web of social dynamics within real estate from the real estate itself. And we think of ourselves as an urban weaving firm, and I'm going to get to that in just a second. And we use the built environment to cultivate community. We're experts at tying people and places and times together into that tapestry of community. But urban weaving is an odd term. I didn't coin it. I can't find anybody else using it. But it does define us in a lot of ways. We consider the threads that contribute to the urban fabric, and we believe that the whole is greater than the sum of its parts. It's the tapestry of community that we're working to create. And those threads include both the physical and the metaphysical, but it's government and public space, it's private individuals, it's corporations, institutions, visitors, natural resources. All of those things and the way they come together will ultimately define that community. And as I said before, the built environment and the web of social dynamics that inhabit it can't be separated. I have a whole nother speech that talks about how it is that social dynamics influence the use of real estate, and that's where we're seeing the greatest sea change today in real estate. Connecting the threads, though, create an urban fabric that's more physically intertwined, and it's therefore more socially engaged. We talk a lot in our business about productive collisions. Those are those moments of interaction between people where you get a glimpse, if not a spark of social intimacy that creates a sense of social obligation. And when you have density, when you have intensity, when you have diversity of use and diversity of user, which is a guiding ethos in the way that we approach our real estate, you find that the community becomes tighter because of its social connections, not simply because of the density of the physical built environment. And we believe that those communities in which those social and physical connections are tighter, where they're more interwoven, are more successful. That's what we call urban weaving. It's that underlying approach to the business that drives decision-making, both in the physical planning and also in the social programming. We've done this now a number of times. Our first larger scale development was in Shorewood, Wisconsin on the north end of Oakland Avenue. This is the cornerstone. Some of you have probably been to Collectivo or North Star Bistro. Engberg Anderson did an unbelievably good job designing both of these two buildings at the cornerstone in Ravenna. You know, they're not big in scale. In fact, they fit the neighborhood, which is a big part of the deal, is if you can make it feel like it was there before, it will feel like it was supposed to be there in the first place. This was about 19,000 square feet of retail, 44 apartments, and it was the start of our focus on local retail and unique identities in order to amplify the neighborhood and the sense of community in which it's located. I grew up 2 blocks from these 2 parcels of land. I was intimately familiar with them before. I'm not entirely sure that my physical proximity to them or my sense of intimacy to them based on my upbringing influenced it, but these really started to represent and manifest our approach to our business. We took that to Mequon and we did Mequon Town Center. And Mequon, in many respects, wasn't the most logical landing place for a development like this. In fact, on Mequon's website, they talk about how they take pride in their low-density community. So reconciling lower density with higher density, where you have low intensity of use with now trying to create intensity of use was an interesting minefield. We feel like we did it well, but what made it work here is that rather than these buildings occupying a suburban farm field, we took out another gas station. I've murdered mobiles now at a regular pace. Excuse me. It's immediately adjacent to City Hall, which is proximate to the swimming pool and the library and the interurban trail. The connectivity of the site helped to define its success. That led to Drexel Town Square, which is a truly remarkable development. I encourage each of you to go look at. It's on Drexel, east of the freeway down in Oak Creek. That was a 80-acre site that was owned previously by AC Delco and Delphi. 8,000 employees at its peak. It shuttered, it went dark. We Energies in the city of Oak Creek purchased it and did a remarkable development there. The right half of this screen is about a 40-acre traditional suburban big box development. It's actually quite boring. There's not much compelling about it. We can find it all over. But the left side of this, the western half of this development, is about 40 acres of something that is remarkable. It's anchored by a $28 million city hall and library. Paula, I suspect you've been to this library. It's another one of those terrific new places for the community to gather, and they do. But this has a town square with a road all the way around it being programmed with farmers markets and viewing parties and doggy days, and there's a splash pad. It's activated. We were picked very early in the process not only to be involved in the design of this, what is the planning, what's the pedestrian experience, but also to develop what we put in orange up here, about 4 city blocks of new Main Street buildings. The form should start getting somewhat familiar to you with residential above and ground floor retail. This is about activation. It's how do you create places and spaces that people are drawn to and that they will linger at once they're there. It's about community creation. This leads us right to the Park East and what you're getting closer now to what you came to hear. The Park East is a somewhat remarkable case study of how urban planning takes a long time to materialize sometimes. John Norquist and Peter Park, in long view wisdom, identified that this freeway corridor should be developed instead of remaining a freeway. This was an elevated freeway. Many people don't know that Barry Mandel's brilliant East Point development on the east side of the river was this same freeway. That was supposed to be the extension of that elevated freeway going down to the lakefront to connect to a lakefront freeway. We would have been a disaster of a city if that had happened, and it didn't. So in the 90s, when Barry was working on that development, it's all housing. There's no retail except for the Pick and Save shopping center. That's not how you do it today. Peter Park and John Norquist came up with a form-based zoning plan. They did a design overlay district, and they created a plan for the Park East that was, to, at least at some point, going to be realized. But it took a while. It's a big piece of land. It stretches all the way from the river west up the hill on Winnebago to the west side of 6th Street. It's a lot of blocks. It's like 6 city blocks of land. And only one development had happened up until the Bucks, and it was the Aloft Hotel. It was the only development on the west side of the river in the Park East. In 2012, the Biz Times held their real estate conference. It's one of the biggest conferences each year, and they called it a developer's fantasy camp. And I had been motivated around the Park East for years. I was honored to be asked, along with Bob Monnet from Mandel Group and Gary Grunow from GPD or Gilbane or any one of his remarkable companies that he's owned over time. And we were each told, come up with anything in Milwaukee, anything, and show us what you do there. Don't worry about politics, which is easy to say and hard to obey, but just do what you would do. I started off by thinking I'd do Summerfest. I was going to kick Summerfest off, not because I don't like Summerfest, but because I have a vision for what that could be. I couldn't do that. Gary was going to do that. So I took the Park East immediately. And I worked on my presentation. I worked on it quite hard. And this format was we each give a 20-minute talk, and then everyone in the audience could vote at the end on which vision they approved of. So I worked. Gary's an icon here. He shaped Milwaukee in ways I can't imagine taking on myself. Bob Monnet from Mandel did the same thing. My vision was to take that land and create a new neighborhood. How could we build something that's uniquely Milwaukee? Pedestrian scale. I threw a pedestrian plaza right down the center line of the property. I envisioned retail incubator space and restaurant incubator space, new office, pedestrian-heavy, activated community. And as it turned out, the attendees there liked Bob Monnet's the best, and in fact, then they liked Gary's, and then they liked mine. So if you're keeping score, I'm 0-1. So I wasn't ready to quit yet. So following that, the county and the city and the state figured out they could do a rolling RFP process, a request for proposals. Anyone could submit a proposal and a bid to develop that piece of land. I found a terrific firm out of Indianapolis. We've now done 290 units in Bayview, 274 units under construction up in Pabst. We wanted to buy the two main blocks of the Park East, and we put together a proposal. It was mixed use, it was ground floor retail, it was pedestrian activated, it had parking, it was all of the stuff we had envisioned for the Park East over time. And it went pretty well. I mean, we offered $1, but as it turns out, they took the Bucks proposal for $1. I wasn't frustrated by that because I thought that the Bucks proposal was actually right. And I came to this very building, to that massive public hearing they had about the county selecting the Bucks, and I spoke in favor of the Bucks. It doesn't change the fact that I felt like I'd lost again, and I wasn't yet ready to quit. So following that, the Bucks actually went out to the community and said, look, come to us and give us a proposal to develop apartments on the west side of the parking structure that's now built, by the way, on 6th Street. So my Indy guys said, okay, well, we're still game. And so we put together a proposal to develop those apartments and also wanted to do the next block over. And it was a great proposal, and then they selected Kevin Newell and his terrific proposal with Royal Capital, again, brilliantly designed by Rotarian Engberg Anderson. And so all of a sudden I'm 0 for 3 in my distinct and driven efforts to be involved. But then something happened. I stayed on top of what the Bucks were doing. I built a relationship with Peter Fagan and Alex Lasry and the team there. And what ultimately happened is that they selected me to be the managing director of real estate. So in January of this year, I took that role. They hired me because of everything I just said. The vision that I have for the Park East is the vision that they have for the Park East. It's intended to be inclusive, diverse, dense, and intense. It's intended to be all of those things. And it's not a small area. As you can see on this map of what can be construed as the Arena District, we need a much better name. But in this, you can see the new arena in charcoal there. You can see at the top right of this, top left of the screen, you can see the new training facility and our wonderful partner Freightert's medical office building that's soon to open. You can see the blue sliver of apartments that I'm totally not developing to the left of the parking structure that's now built. But you can also see all of these other blocks and all of these colors. Each of those colors represents aspirational thoughts on what this district could become if we did it the way that we want to do it. We need to drive daytime population here. We need office. We've tried. You've probably read about high-profile RFPs that have been in the newspaper for office folks that are looking to find space. We continue to push forward on a concerted basis to find that daytime population, and we will. But we're also talking to civic uses and arts uses. The convention center district may expand. Hospitality and large format hospitality takes a very different role in this district in the event that certain dominoes fall. What we're concentrating on right now most heavily is the blue stuff to the right of the arena, which is the live block. But the arena itself is remarkable. This is a $500 million building that ostensibly is private in the sense that the Bucks will be there, but it's not. It's for the residents of Milwaukee and its visitors. And it's different than the Bradley Center. The Bradley Center closes its doors and turns its back on the city with the exception of its atrium on 4th Street. The intent of this building is to be, despite being massive, for it to feel somehow transparent. And what we're doing on the plaza, and when you look back at this arena, it is engaging. And that top right on the arena there, that Panorama Club, I encourage everyone to do this at least once when the new arena opens in the 2018-19 season. Those are the nosebleed seats. The worst real estate in the arena have been converted into some of the best real estate in the arena. It's a club access level where you can go and look down on the court, and the sight lines are amazing in this arena. Or you can go and look at the city. And it's an incredible view back at our inspirational skyline, particularly as it continues to change. And that plaza really matters. So that plaza is where 4th Street was, and you can probably remember some of the kind of vitriol that flowed around this decision, but that plaza is intended for heavy programming. We have plans that show a stage where the word plaza is. We have a plan that shows a stage to the north. Each of those plans can accommodate 12,000 people watching events. But that's not what it's made for. We have 3-on-3 basketball court layouts. We have futsal tournament layouts. We have viewing party layouts. We have an ice skating rink layout. We have farmers markets, crafts fairs. In fact, if you can think of it, we've planned for it in the infrastructure and the design of this plaza. Buildings A, B, and C, you'll hear me refer to later, are 3 new mixed buildings that are intended to be destinations for Milwaukeeans on game day, to be sure. But from the beginning, in my conversations with the Bucks, I said we will be measured in the success when it's a Tuesday night in February and there's not a game. And if there are people here, we're winning. And if there's not, then we needed to plan better. There's a beer garden connector I'll show you some imagery of that connects down to Old World 3rd Street because our goal is to grow the pie. We are not trying to take business from all of the successful or struggling Milwaukee business owners who have been working so hard to keep their businesses vibrant, dynamic, and successful in this market. So one of the mantras we've followed is unique in Milwaukee as a guidepost for how it is that we're going to fill these spaces. The plaza itself will be dynamic, and the buildings on the plaza will be dynamic. We can program it, we can make them transparent, we can do all of these things, but it will be successful because of the people that go there. To give you some context, there's roughly 41 Bucks home games, not including the preseason. Let's go ahead and add another 8 to 10 when we win the NBA championship. We're going to have 50-some basketball games from the Bucks. The Marquette team will be playing there. Call it another 15 games. We'll have the NCAAs on a rotational basis, but we will also have all of those other types of events you see in the arena. We will be at easily 80 to 100 events in the arena on a baseline. We'll also have a similar number of program dates on the plaza. So roughly 150 days a year, we will be programming these spaces and activating the environment. The rest of the time, again, it's going to depend on who our users are. These buildings change over time, so you can see there's been a change in some of the look and feel of the architecture. Building A, which is in the background of this one, is not going to be a 4-story building. It's likely to be a 2-story building, and I'll show that in a second. But what we're intending to do in these buildings is lots of operable glass on the first floor and lots of outdoor seating on the second floor, so you kind of get that layer cake effect of people throughout the district. The beer garden itself is dynamic. This is a connector. It's a public transit way between Old World 3rd and the plaza, but it's also meant to be a gathering place. We can put viewing screens in there. We can have viewing parties. You can also drink beer in there, which people in Milwaukee do seem to enjoy. So we're programming it and thinking hard about how these spaces can work and flow during the course of the year. This is Building A, a much more current rendering. It continues to evolve a bit. Building A will have 2 users. It continues to show strong elements of design suggesting a beer production facility in a portion of it. We continue to work very hard on that and are getting what we believe to be very close on that. The right side of it, each of those 2 sides will be 2 stories. And we anticipate having a very dynamic food, beverage, entertainment type environment in that. We are concentrating hard on the entertainment side. If we've learned anything about millennials, but also just about evolving consumer preferences, experiential real estate is far more successful right now than just traditional static bricks and mortar retail. And so we are working to find, whether national or local, experiential-based food and beverage users, predominantly in the live block, will go to a much more diverse set of users through the balance of the space. I'll leave you with 2 images before I open the floor. Again, the plaza and the arena. This will become, in many ways, one of downtown Milwaukee's only outdoor rooms. We're shaping the space. We're creating a gathering opportunity for folks, whether it be music or jazz or whether it be 3-on-3 basketball tournaments or whatever it may be. The goal here is for this to become a forum for Milwaukee. And the beer garden connector continues the reaching of the arena into the neighborhood in order to create mechanisms for Old World 3rd Street to grow just as much as we're growing with the plaza itself. And finally, I'm going to leave the district on the screen because I think that may be some questions associated with this. But the one thing I can tell you, and this is with deep assurance, that the Milwaukee Bucks are absolutely firmly committed to the notion that if Milwaukee is better, so too will they be better. And that's actually something that we can all take forward with us as we think about our own businesses. I didn't know I'd get inspired by New Yorkers about Milwaukee, but it happened. And I couldn't be more proud to be trusted with what they've given me to work on their behalf. But two, I also couldn't be more pleased to give assurances that they really are thinking about our community. And honestly, they've done it without the blinders that many of us carry on our own as we think about our own city and what we're capable of. So I appreciate your time and am looking forward to any questions you may have for me. Yes, sir.
How much of an inspiration has LA Live been for this, and how is it different?
Well, I think LA Live, to me, probably suggests more negatives than positives. LA Live went through its own set of struggles. The very first thing about LA Live that poses issues for me is that it's in LA. And that's not a denigration of LA. LA is a remarkable city. But it's hard to find somebody from California and then say that they are uniquely LA. I struggle to understand the way LA's identity is expressed at LA Live. The spaces there can work. They've worked to find their way on that. Some members of the Bucks have worked on LA Live. But I would suggest that one, our scale is much smaller. And two, we are working on a very concerted basis, particularly on the areas that aren't the arena and the live block, to really weave in how the future development of those other blocks works. And I think it'll be successful if they aren't construed as the arena district. If the arena is just part of a bigger neighborhood, that's where we'll be successful, which is why I think the arena district is a complicated name, because if we do this right, the arena will just be one of the buildings in there. Yes?
The last time I drove by, you couldn't even see the building because the parking structures are in the way. I'm just trying to figure out, you know, it's a beautiful building if you get up close to it, but, you know, there isn't any perspective in terms of seeing the actual arena from, you know, any distance.
Yeah, I think that's a very accurate perception. But what I can say is, if with density being one of our goals, with intensity of use being one of our goals, it is complicated to create that longer view. But what I would suggest is if you're going westbound on Juneau, the curve of the building is actually visible from well east of the river. And big buildings, if you get a big wide open view of a big building, it means you're looking across unused space. And that's what the Park East has always been. And I would much prefer that we obscure the view of the arena in the interest of additional activity and tax base. Where this building will really shine, though, is on foot. Certainly from the air as the blimp looks down at our naming rights sponsor, whoever that'll be. But I think it'll be on foot from the plaza and from Juneau, and as you engage it down at the pedestrian level as opposed to in the vehicular level. Unfortunately, I use the word vehicle because you have to here, and that 1,250 stall parking structure is absolutely integral to how the arena works, and having a skywalk to the arena is one of the kind of secret sauce elements of all of that. So it had to be somewhere, and that was just the available location for it. Yes? Yes, ma'am. Well, I think there's one. Yeah, I'm going to repeat the question. So there's a couple of things that you mentioned there. One, I think the primary thrust of the question, correct me if I'm wrong, was that Milwaukee has a very flat population curve. And in fact, I could start rattling off numbers. Generally speaking, let's just assume that we have a flat population. And so the question then is, how does that flat population impact the longer-term viability of things like this project or of the symphony and what it's doing? And I think there are two separate answers to that, and I'm going to use the one that I think is more important for this issue today. We have an underperforming facility right now in the BMO Harris Bradley Center. It literally cannot continue to be used as a professional basketball venue. It was designed in an era, it was the very last of the previous generation of facilities. It has deferred maintenance issues. It's ineffective for its purpose as it sits today. If we want to keep the Milwaukee Bucks, we build a new arena. Well, we've already solved for that particular piece of the equation. But what I would suggest is that with 600,000 people in the city, roughly speaking, and a relatively flat population in the four-county area, we have significant room for improvement to serve our current population, and that we should always be striving to create the underlying physical assets that serve our current population as effectively as possible. The Symphony, the Milwaukee Symphony is raising its funds for its new venue, but it's doing it through philanthropy. So if that works, it's because the people that are already here are supporting it. So I think, not being privy to the business plan, nor am I soliciting a position on the board, my suspicion is they've got very smart people looking at how that organization operates and whether being in the new facility makes fiscal sense or not. The Milwaukee Public Museum has announced that it'll be looking for a facility. Our other civic treasures like Betty Bryn are in the midst of thinking about whether there should be new facilities. I believe that fluid has a tendency to fill the container in which it's located. I think we have enough resources here to make investments like these, and I believe in the long-term viability. That leads to the second answer, which is if we want our city to grow, and I think we should, we damn well better be attractive to the folks that don't live here already. And I think that things like the arena, like a strong and vibrant symphony and Milwaukee Repertory Theater, dynamic library, and other civic infrastructure, those things matter as we try to attract the next businesses, as we try to attract the next residents, and as we try to grow our city more organically as opposed to through some of this institutional inorganic growth. Yes, I am so pleased that I have absolutely neither information nor authority to answer a question of that seriousness. I am simply not qualified to answer that question. No, I think it's a very good question. I mean, the question was, with the rise of incidents in terrorism and other types of attacks as they relate to larger venues like these, what planning and other considerations does that suggest as you go through this process? And I can't speak to that. I'd be more than happy to find the person who can answer that question. What I can tell you is that people are going to gather, and we can't put bollards up and prevent vehicles from getting to places. And so I think you make a decision whether you reshape the way you approach your life, or whether you take the best measures that you can. I can say that we do talk a lot about security and how are we going to control circumstances and situations, but I can't speak to what specifically from a design perspective that changes. Yeah.
What's the timing on not only the entertainment block, but filling up buildings B and C and some of the other development around here? Do you have a...
So the plaza is kind of under construction now as we speak. That's all starting. We are going to start the beer garden connector and buildings A, B, and C between now and the very beginning of spring. Our target is to have buildings A and B at the least up and enclosed by the time the arena opens in October of 2018. The Bradley Center comes down by October of 2019. That site becomes developable then. And so I would expect that, one, we're within a couple of weeks of making dynamic announcements about who these users will be. I apologize to the press for not having any kind of scoop here available today, but the live block operators, we should have a substantial portion of those open while we go deep into the playoffs in the 2019 season. Yes. Well, I know of a variety of local purveyors. Mm-hmm. Yes.
Well, you've been pretty vocal on us being a potential for Amazon headquarters. Could you talk about that?
So the question was, he's referring to two op-ed pieces that they published in the Biz Journal about Amazon coming to Milwaukee. I don't know that Milwaukee is or isn't a truly viable candidate for it. I don't know what initiatives are being taken by anyone in the city. What I was really suggesting was that I'm going to be fascinated to read what these cities propose. I hope they become public, because it's going to be a fascinating study on how municipalities present themselves. And I feel like our city has sold itself short somewhat consistently, and we've got a little bit of an inferiority complex and self-consciousness that I think comes in many respects from being humble and hardworking and kind of believing that we're not as good as we actually are as a mechanism to force us to work harder. And we have incredible opportunities here in Milwaukee. Milwaukee is the linchpin of a profound region between Madison and Chicago and Milwaukee. We have over 12 million people. We have 8,750,000 people getting on planes every single month between the 4 airports that service our region. Foxconn came here, or near here, because of the benefits of being between Milwaukee and Chicago. We offer something that other markets don't offer, and I think we actually do have specific opportunity here. The Solvay Coke site and the Inner Harbor District offer an unbelievable opportunity for large-scale development. But really what I was suggesting in all of that is, I use a Charlie and the Chocolate Factory analogy. It's like my favorite movie. And if you remember, Willy Wonka had a contest, and he wrapped chocolate bars in golden tickets and sent them across the world. And it took luck or incredible buying power to increase your odds of getting one of those tickets. And the kids didn't know it at the time, but the winner was going to get the factory from Willy Wonka. And Veruca Salt was a spoiled little beast, and Augustus Gloop was a glutton, and Violet Beauregard, just the gum problem really caught up with her. But Charlie Bucket was a kind-hearted, yes, he was human, he made a mistake, and he drank the fizzy pop all the way up to the fan, but when he won, it was because he was kind-hearted, hardworking. He was Milwaukee. That's what we are. We are kind-hearted, hardworking people, and frankly, Amazon should be glad to have us as much as we're glad to have them. But I think that's part of going back to the question: how do we have a flat population and sustain these things? We sustain them because we deserve them. And frankly, we should ask for them, and then we should participate in how that works. So, do I think we can get Amazon? I don't know. I'm not qualified to submit the RFP, but I sure think that we could if we tried. I don't. We have a long list of them, and a bunch of them were so bad that they were dismissed. They should have been dismissed as they were written. So I don't have a better name. Milwaukee is a pretty good name for it, though. Okay. Thank you very much. I appreciate your time.
An MCM production.